Okay, hands up if this has ever happened to you. And be honest, this is a safe space. It's late. The moon is high, your coffee is cold, and you have to be awake for, let's say, responsible adult activities in just a few short hours. You've just been utterly demolished for the 15th time in a row by the same boss. Your screen displays a single mocking word, dead. And what do? You don't sigh, put the controller down, and go to bed like a sensible person. No, your thumb hovers over the button, your brain is already racing with new strategies, and you feel it, that undeniable, almost magnetic pull. A little voice in your head, the one that ignores all logic and self-preservation, whispers just 3 words. One more run. You know that voice, right? It's the siren song of the roguelike. It's the same force that convinces you that this time, with this random sword and this weird potion, you can definitely conquer the underworld, escape the island, or scale the spire. You're not even playing to win anymore. You're playing just to see what happens next, to feel that click, that rush, that tiny piece of progress. This, my friends, is not a lack of willpower. This is by design. It is the magical, maddening, and utterly brilliant world of games like Hades, Dead Cells, and Slay the Spire. These games are psychological masterpieces, and their addictive nature is no accident. So, what are the secret ingredients in this potent cocktail of fun? What dark game design magic keeps us coming back for more punishment and loving every second of it? In this episode of the Game Codex, we're diving deep into the psychology of fun. We're going to dissect the addictive loops of roguelikes and roguelites, and yes, we will absolutely settle the like versus light debate to uncover why failure in these games feels less like a setback and more like an invitation. We'll explore how they turn frustration into fascination and random chance into compelling stories. We're going to learn not just how to play these games better, but to understand why we play them at all. Strap in, because we're about to make sense of the chaos. Let me tell you a story about my friend. Let's call him Dave. Dave is not a professional gamer. He's an accountant. His idea of a risk is using a non-standard font in a spreadsheet. But a few months ago, Dave started playing Hades. And Dave changed. I got a text from him at 11:37 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was just a screenshot of his run history, a long, crimson streak of failures. The message read, "The Bone Hydra is a personal affront to me and my family." I laughed and told him to go to bed. He replied instantly, "Just one more run. I've almost got his pattern down." I didn't hear from him again until 1:15 a.m. This time, it was a blurry photo of his TV screen. He had won. He'd beaten the Bone Hydra. The message was a single, triumphant word, vindication. I called him the next day, expecting to hear a tale of glorious victory, but instead he sounded haunted. "It was amazing," he said. "I got this boon from Ares that made my cast just shred through him, but then I got to Elysium." He took a long, dramatic pause. "There's a butterfly boss, Alora. A butterfly. And it killed me in like 12 seconds. And then he said the words I knew were coming. The words that are the very heartbeat of this genre. "So obviously," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I have to go back tonight. I have a new theory. I need to try a build focused entirely on my dash attack. And I think if I give a different keepsake to Cerberus..." Dave was no longer playing to beat the game. He was playing to solve a puzzle, to test a hypothesis. That one more run wasn't about winning. It was about closure. It was about seeing if his new idea, his new strategy was the right one. The game had successfully transferred the goal from see the credits to satisfy your curiosity. This is the core of the roguelike hook. It's a genius little psychological trap. When you lose, you don't think, "Well, I failed." You think, Oh, now I see what I did wrong. Next time I won't do that. Next time I'll take the electric railgun instead of the flamethrower. Next time I'll take the path with more shops. Next time I'll remember that the big slime splits into smaller slimes. Failure isn't a full stop, it's a semicolon. The story isn't over, it's just waiting for you to write the next sentence. And the game is constantly, subtly feeding you those what-if scenarios. What if you combined this power with that weapon? What if you took a risk on an unknown room? That one more run is the siren song of potential. It's the promise that the next attempt could be the legendary, god-tier, unstoppable run that you'll tell your friends about for weeks. And the beautiful, terrible part is, it's usually right. So, we're talking about roguelikes. Or are we? If you've ever been in a gaming forum, you know this is a dangerous question. The roguelike versus roguelite debate can get more heated than a debate about pineapple on pizza. But don't worry, we're going to clear this up. It all starts with a game from 1980, a game so foundational that it literally gave the genre its name. That game was Rogue. Imagine this. A dungeon, represented only by ASCII characters on a screen. A little @ symbol for your hero. Ks for kobolds. Hashes for walls. You descend floor by floor, turn by turn, collecting loot, fighting monsters. The catch? The entire dungeon was randomly generated. Every single playthrough was unique. And the final, brutal, beautiful rule, permadeath. One life. When you died, that was it. Your @ symbol was gone forever. You went back to the beginning with no items, no progress, just your bruised ego and the painful knowledge you'd gained. Rogue was hard, unforgiving, and utterly compelling for a certain type of masochistic player. Now, for decades, the term roguelike was reserved for games that followed this formula very strictly. We call these the Berlin interpretation rules, which include things like being turn-based, grid-based, and having that punishing, no-progress permadeath. Games like NetHack or Angband are pure, uncut classic roguelikes. But then, game designers started playing these and thought, this is brilliant, but also kind of inaccessible to, people who enjoy having fun without suffering a nervous breakdown. So they started borrowing the most compelling ingredients, the procedural generation and the permadeath, but started blending them with other genres, and crucially, adding a new ingredient, meta progression. And thus, the Roguelite was born. So let's make it simple. Think of it like this. A roguelike is the strict traditionalist grandparent. It adheres to the old rules. It's like a classic no-frills recipe that hasn't changed in 40 years. Permadeath means you start from absolute zero every single time. A roguelite is the fun, innovative grandchild. It says, Grandpa's rules are cool and all, but what if we mixed in some action combat or made it a deck builder? And what if when you died, you got to keep something? That something is meta progression, permanent upgrades that make your next run and every run after slightly easier or open up new possibilities. You're still starting over, but you're starting from a slightly higher baseline. So Slay the Spire, with its card unlocks and permanent character upgrades, that's a roguelite. Dead Cells, with its permanent weapon unlocks and ability to keep cells to upgrade your forge, roguelite. Hades, with its Mirror of Night upgrades and weapon unlocks that persist through death, a masterpiece of a roguelite. The line is blurry, and honestly, most people use the terms interchangeably now, which is fine. But for our purposes today, when we talk about the psychology of one more run, we're almost always talking about the roguelite model. Because that meta progression, that promise that even a failed run moves you forward, is the secret sauce that hooked millions of players, including my friend Dave. It's the genre learning to be kinder without losing its addictive edge. So we've defined our terms. Now let's look at the engine, the beating heart of every great roguelite. I call it the addiction engine, but in polite company, we call it the core gameplay loop, and it's a beautifully simple 3-part cycle. Part 1, the run. This is the gameplay itself. You hit start, and you're thrust into a fresh, randomized world. In Hades, you're bursting out of the pool of sticks. In Dead Cells, you're dropping from a pipe in a new prison layout. In Slay the Spire, you're drawing a new hand on the first floor. This phase is all about skill, adaptation, and luck. You're making dozens of micro decisions. Do I take the path with the elite enemy for better loot? Do I choose this powerful but risky weapon? Do I rest at a campfire or upgrade a card? You're building a unique build from the random tools the game gives you, and for the next 20 to 60 minutes, you are living in the moment, reacting, learning, and hopefully thriving. Part 2. The inevitable, hilarious, or tragic death. Let's be real. You are going to die. A lot. The game is designed for it. But here's the crucial psychological shift. In a roguelite, death is not a game over screen in the traditional sense. It's not a failure state that sends you back to your last save. It's a transition. It's the end of one chapter and the beginning of the next. When Zagreus washes up back in the House of Hades, he's not being punished, he's coming home to debrief. The game frames death as a narrative beat, a chance to talk to characters, and most importantly, Part 3, the meta progression. This is the genius part. This is the carrot on the stick that makes the entire cycle work. After you die, you don't go back to the start empty-handed. You bring something back with you. In Hades, it's darkness, gemstones, and nectar to spend on permanent upgrades at the Mirror of Night, or to give to characters. In Dead Cells, it's cells you spend at the collector to permanently add new weapons to the loot pool or upgrade their quality. In Slay the Spire, it's unlocking new, more powerful cards for future runs. This is the feedback loop that soothes the sting of failure. You lost, yes, but you gained. You are now permanently, irrevocably, slightly more powerful or have more options than you were before. This transforms the emotional response from, I wasted my time, to my time was invested. Even a disastrous 5-minute run that ends in a humiliating defeat has value because it earned you 50 cells or 100 darkness. You are always building, always progressing, even when you're failing spectacularly at the main goal. And this loop is self-reinforcing. Those new unlocks from the meta progression make you want to start a new run immediately to try them out. Ooh, I just unlocked the aspect of Chiron for the bow. I have to see how it works. And so you begin a new run, which will likely end in another death, which will give you more resources for more meta progression. It's a closed, self-perpetuating system of fun. The run engages your short-term tactical brain. The death provides a moment of reflection and a clear endpoint. The meta progression engages your long-term strategic brain and gives you a constant sense of forward momentum. It's a promise the game makes to you. No matter what happens out there, your time will never be wasted. And that right there is why we can't stop playing. So we've established that meta progression is the secret sauce. But not all unlocks are created equal. Throwing a bunch of plus 1% damage upgrades at a player gets boring fast. The genius of modern roguelites is in the variety and impact of their unlocks. They understand that players aren't just stat-hungry robots, we're curious explorers and collectors. Think of the unlocks in 3 distinct layers. First, you have the foundation upgrades. These are your workhorses. In Hades, this is the Mirror of Night. Getting an extra dash, more health, a second chance to defy death. These aren't flashy, but they are fundamental. They slowly but surely widen the margin for error, making the game more accessible. They are the game whispering, keep going, you're getting stronger, you can do this. Then you have the Arsenal Expanders. This is where the real one more run magic happens. This isn't about making you numerically stronger, it's about making the game wider. Unlocking a new weapon in Hades or Dead Cells isn't just a new tool, it's a whole new way to play. The twin fists play nothing like the shield of chaos. The electric whip demands a different strategy than the broadsword. Each new weapon is essentially a new game mode, a new puzzle to solve. It directly answers the question, what should I do on my next run? With a tantalizing, well, you haven't tried this yet, have you? And finally, the most sophisticated layer, the narrative and cosmetic unlocks. Games like Hades are masters of this. Giving a nectar to a character doesn't just give you a powerful keepsake, it unlocks a new piece of their story. Spending gemstones to renovate the House of Hades doesn't help you in combat, but it makes the world feel more lived in, more yours. You're not just a prisoner of the cycle, you're an interior decorator of the underworld. These unlocks feed a different part of our brain, the part that loves stories and completionism. They ensure that even when you're not in the mood for a high-stakes run, there's still a reason to boot up the game and chat with Achilles for a while. It's a masterclass in giving the player agency over their own progression and constantly renewing the game's sense of novelty. If meta progression is the heart of the modern roguelite, then Procedural Generation is its soul. It's the magic that makes every single run a unique story. Without it, these games would be, well, they'd be very short, very memorizable, and you'd have no excuse for your failures beyond your own lack of skill. And where's the fun in that? Procedural generation is a fancy term for the game designs the level for you on the fly. But it's not totally random. It's smart randomness. Think of it like a master chef using a recipe. The chef has a set of ingredients and rules. Okay, for this run, I'll need 3 combat rooms, 1 shop, 1 treasure room, and an elite enemy. I'll arrange them in a branching path and sprinkle in some environmental hazards. The exact layout, the enemies in each room, the rewards, that's all shuffled like a deck of cards. This serves 2 brilliant psychological purposes. First, it creates endless novelty. You can never truly master the map. You can master the combat, you can master the mechanics, but you can never just autopilot your way through. The game is constantly asking you to reevaluate, to adapt. Do I take the path that might have a better reward, but has an elite enemy I struggle with? This constant low-level decision-making keeps your brain engaged and prevents boredom. It's the opposite of grinding the same polished level in a linear game. Here, the ground is always shifting under your feet, and that's exciting. Second, and this is more subtle, it creates personalized stories of triumph and failure. Nobody else will have the exact same run as you. That time you beat the final boss with 1 HP left, that was because of this specific sequence of power-ups you found. That utterly broken, godlike build where you were melting everything on screen, that was a once-in-a-lifetime alignment of the stars, a perfect storm of random items that synergized in a way the developers might not have even intended. It creates these emergent water-cooler moments that are entirely your own. You didn't just beat the game, you conquered a challenge that was uniquely crafted for you in that moment. And when you lose, you can always blame the RNG, the random number gods, for not giving you the right tools. It's the perfect scapegoat for our pride. Now we get to the real mind game. How do you take one of the most negative experiences in gaming, failure, and make it not just palatable, but actually desirable? How do you make players want to die? Traditional games teach us that failure is bad. You lose a life, you get a game over, you reload from a save and try to avoid making the same mistake. The emotional weight is on the consequence. Roguelites flip this entire model on its head. They shift the weight from the consequence to the lesson. When you die in a roguelite, the punishment is minimal. You lose your temporary run-specific power, but you keep your permanent knowledge and your meta progression. The game is implicitly telling you the point of that run was not to win. The point was to learn. Every death is a data point. You learn enemy attack patterns. You learn which item combinations are traps. You learn how to manage your resources better. The game designs its difficulty curves to be teachers. The first boss isn't a wall, it's a midterm exam. It tests everything you've learned up to that point. When it stomps you, it's giving you a very clear lesson on what you need to improve. This taps directly into a powerful psychological concept called mastery orientation. People with a mastery orientation are driven by the desire to get better at a task for its own sake. They see failure as a necessary part of the learning process. Roguelikes are basically mastery orientation simulators. They reward the process of learning, not just the outcome of winning. Compare this to a game with a punishing save system. There, failure often means repeating content you've already mastered, which is boring and frustrating. In a roguelite, failure means getting to experience new content, a new layout, new item combinations, immediately. You're not repeating a lesson, you're starting a whole new chapter in your textbook. The game makes failure feel like exploration, and that is its greatest trick. For a long time, the story in most roguelites was thin. You are a warrior. A spire exists. Climb it. Good luck. The narrative was just a wrapper for the gameplay loop. And then along came Hades from Supergiant Games, which looked at that model and said, what if the story and the gameplay were locked in a beautiful, eternal dance? Hades didn't just add a story to a roguelite, it wove the roguelite structure directly into the fabric of its narrative. Think about it. You play as Zagreus, the son of Hades, who is literally trying to escape the underworld, a place defined by cycles of death and rebirth. Your repeated, canonical deaths are not a gameplay abstraction, they are the plot. Each time you die and fail, you are thrust back into the hub world, where you can advance conversations with a rich cast of characters. This is a stroke of genius. It means there's no wasted run. Even a 30-second run that ends in a fiery explosion is valuable, because you can now go talk to Achilles and get a new line of dialogue, or give a gift to Cerberus, or hear your father, Hades, mock you from his desk. The narrative is the meta progression. Unlocking a new weapon isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a story beat, a legendary weapon of the underworld being entrusted to you. It completely reframes the player's motivation. You're not just playing one more run to get stronger, you're playing one more run to see what happens next in the story, to complete a character's favor, to uncover a new piece of lore. The game constantly dangles narrative carrots. If you can just make it to Asphodel this time, you might run into Eurydice, and she'll have a new song for you. By making death a narrative device, Hades removed the last vestige of frustration from the genre. It gave us a reason to want to come home. It showed the entire industry that a roguelite could have a deep, emotionally resonant, and perfectly integrated story, proving that the loop isn't just about addiction. It can be about storytelling too. If Hades is the master of narrative integration, then Slay the Spire is the undisputed king of strategic purity. It took the roguelite formula and fused it with deck building, creating a game that is less about twitch reflexes and more about becoming a tactical genius. And its design is so airtight, it's basically a lesson in game balance. The core loop is simple. You climb a spire, one turn-based combat at a time. After each fight, you add a new card to your deck. This is the heart of the build, but here's the first stroke of genius. Every card you add is a permanent decision for that run. There is no going back. This creates an agonizingly delicious tension. That powerful, rare card might be awesome, but will it clog your deck? That common attack card is boring, but it might synergize perfectly with your relics. The relics, the second masterstroke. Relics are passive items that grant you powerful, game-altering effects. Maybe you draw more cards each turn. Maybe you deal more damage if you play 3 attacks in a row. The game is a constant puzzle of trying to make your cards and your relics work together. You're not just building a deck, you're building an engine. And when that engine finally clicks, it's a thing of beauty. You're drawing your entire deck in one turn, generating massive block and then unleashing a single devastating attack. It's a power fantasy for chess players. Slay the Spire is the ultimate example of a game that makes you feel smart. Your victories feel earned because they are the result of hundreds of small, correct decisions. And your losses are almost always instructive. You look back and think, I shouldn't have taken that card, or I should have rested instead of upgrading. It removes the element of blaming bad reflexes and puts the focus entirely on your planning and foresight. It perfected the just one more run feeling by making every run a deep strategic puzzle that you're desperate to solve correctly the next time. We've talked about game design, but now let's talk about neuroscience, because all these brilliant design choices we've outlined, they all tap into very specific, very powerful wiring in our brains. The main culprit? A little neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine isn't about pleasure, it's about anticipation. It's the molecule of motivation. It's what gets released when you're about to get a reward, driving you to seek it out. And Roguelikes are basically dopamine dispensing machines, thanks to a concept called the variable reward schedule. This is a principle famously studied by B.F. Skinner with his pigeons. If you give a pigeon a seed every time it pecks a button, it will peck when it's hungry. But if you give it a seed at random, unpredictable intervals, the pigeon will peck that button obsessively. The unpredictability is key. It creates a state of constant anticipation. Now, let's translate that to Hades or Slay the Spire. When you open a treasure chest, you don't know what you're going to get. Will it be a common boon or a legendary one? Will it be the exact relic that makes your deck work? That moment of anticipation, of not knowing, is a huge dopamine hit. When you defeat an elite enemy, you're not sure what powerful reward it will drop. When you see a question mark on the map, you don't know if it's a helpful event, a cruel trick, or a shop. The entire run is a sequence of unpredictable, potential rewards. Your brain is constantly in a state of, ooh, what's next? This is the same psychological principle that powers slot machines and social media feeds. But in roguelites, it's coupled with genuine skill and strategy, making it feel earned. Every one more run is your brain chasing that next hit of anticipation, the next unpredictable reward, the next chance to see a god-tier combination of items that you've never seen before. The game has you hooked not on winning, but on the thrilling possibility of what might happen. So where do we go from here? The roguelite formula has been refined to near perfection in games like Hades and Slay the Spire. What's next? I think we're going to see the genre continue to hybridize and push into new territories. First, I think we'll see more narrative experiments. Hades blew the door open, but there's so much more to explore. What about a roguelite mystery game, where each run uncovers a new clue about a central murder? Or a romantic comedy roguelite where you're constantly trying to craft the perfect date, learning from your failures? The potential for blending compelling, loop-driven stories with gameplay is massive. Second, we're already seeing genre fusion go wild. We have roguelite deck builders, Slay the Spire, roguelite Metroidvanias, Dead Cells, roguelite shooters, Gunfire Reborn. The next step is even weirder combinations. A roguelite city builder? A roguelite social sim? The core loop is so flexible, it can be grafted onto almost any other genre. And finally, I think we'll see more player-driven creation and chaos. Games like Noita and The Binding of Isaac have massive, complex systems that interact in wild, unpredictable ways. The future might lie in giving players even more tools to break the game intentionally, to create their own God runs through deep systemic understanding, turning the player from a mere participant into an alchemist of chaos. The future of the roguelite is not about abandoning the core loop, but about using that loop as a foundation to tell new kinds of stories, create new kinds of strategic challenges, and empower players in ways we haven't even imagined yet. The cycle is eternal, and it's only getting more interesting. And that, my friends, is the psychological magic trick of the roguelite. It's a genre that took the frustration of failure and turned it into a lesson. It took the grind of progression and turned it into a collection of fascinating stories and new toys. It understands our brains better than we do, tapping into our love of novelty, our drive for mastery, and our addiction to that thrilling question. What's next? The next time you find yourself at 2 a.m. clicking Start New Run for the 10th time, I hope you'll smile. You're not weak-willed. You're just human. And you're caught in one of the most brilliantly designed cycles of fun that modern gaming has to offer. But now, I want to hear from you. What's the roguelite that stole your sleep? What was your most legendary, broken, I can't believe this worked build? Shout it out in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychology of fun, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel out. Until next time, this is Alora at the Game Codex signing off. Happy running!